Hello, everyone. I welcome you to another session where I would like to share with you how I have life coached Reem, one of my clients, out of his confusion via a value exercise that I have not shared before. Let's get started. Meet Reem and let's find out his confusion story. Reem is a senior project lead. He has been working for past 10 years. He's a working professional with a very good track record of his work and performance. However, in his current present state, Reem seems to be in a very confused state of mind. And his confusion story uh, takes us back to his personal life. But before we get there, I would also like to share with you that when Reem came to me and we started his assignment, uh, the very need when Reem felt that he needs a life coach, this was precisely after almost 3 years of, uh, I should say, struggle that Reem has been going through. Because for the past 3 years, when Reem was when he could actually no longer take it, when he began to think that his career is the worst that was getting affected on account of the personal issues he was facing, and it was actually beginning to show up. But as you all know, what I really want to bring your attention to is none of our issues in personal life actually gives us a symptom that please go fetch a life coach, hire a life coach, and get help. Same thing happened with Reem. He had this personal issue for a long time. However, the impact of that he started to experience only in the past 3 years because with his long tenure and good track performance, his work demanded him to work at the next level so that he is up for promotion. And also with the newly found promotion, he was now into a more senior and reasonable roles, which required him a certain particular trait that was expected out of him, not just of a leader, but also at his way of managing his own self, the large team that he was handling. And Reem found that for the past 3 years, he found that he was not growing professionally. He found that he was constantly his professional growth was getting hindered because there was something at his personal end which was a major obstacle, and that was impacting him at a very deeper level. And that's where but since he didn't really first give due attention to it, when he started to realize that, for example, in this narration, when I and Reem like I was coaching him, he mentioned to me how he missed out on two of the major projects which just slipped uh, through his portfolio just because of a certain behavior that he demonstrated along with his supervisor, which has nothing to do with his previous good work record, but more to do with the way he was becoming. And it was a pileup of 3 years and suffering, which was now slowly kind of impacting him. And he said, no, I think this is a time that I should seek help. So, why I bring this to you, friends, is if in case any one of you who's listening to this, you feel you've been hesitant to reach out, seek help, I would say, please do not suffer alone. Reach out and seek help. And believe me, while you reach out to whatever resource you have at your end, or if you want to reach out to me, whatever suits you, you will find help. If me or any other coach cannot help you, we will redirect you to the right resource, or perhaps just let you know what you could do so that you just don't stay stuck or really miss out on those wonderful opportunities just because You were hesitant to reach out and seek help. So, moving on with this confusion story, continuing there, when me and Reem we sat down, I did several sessions. Usually, I call them the deep dive sessions in our coaching parlance. And here's what I found. Now, this is what I have drew it with my pen, and this was Reem's confusion story. Now, what you see here is I've just written a snippet or a snapshot summary of the whole of Reem's confusion story, which was actually not a particular event or an incident. It was more of one incident leading to another, the other leading to another. So here, let me first help you understand this from this point. So on his job, Reem has a slight argument with his boss, and there are areas where he does not agree, and he has a kind of a debate, and it turns into a little bit of a not so pleasant argument, which he carries back home. So this is a web, and this is I have written fault finding, and sorry for my handwriting. Um Reem gets into a web of self pity as he gets home because he's carrying his argument still in his head, and then he try to find fault with all that his supervisor has to say because he does not agree with him. Then from there is a whole change in his mood. He has a lot of mood swings, which then also lead to his conflict with his partner, and one thing leads to another. Then after having an argument with the partner, again Dream carries the same lack of EI, emotional intelligence, back into his job. So this is a web which is going on and on and on. So to say, there's just not one thing that one can put a hand on. There are several small things which Reem find himself getting agitated and annoyed. And coming to this part where I've written this in points, what I had figured out from the more detailed narration that he shared with me, the first thing I found that Reem lacked awareness of the solution, meaning he was not really able to put a finger on what's really was wrong. I asked him several questions, but what I found was he did not knew or was not really aware of what's really important to him in life. What are his priorities? Because he never gave any due attention to it. He always went with the flow, one job to another, 1 year to another. His relationship was quite steady, but the very approach of investing time, focus, plan, he found that all of that belonged only to a project. While in the personal life, most of it he took it for granted, never worked on it. And when in our life, or be it his career or his relationship, when things were moving, which demanded him to take stock, reflect, and sometimes a relationship also demands that you give it its due time and approach it in from a different way than you used to when you were quite young. So his immature approach to his relationship, per se, not just to his partner, but also to his boss and his supervisors, was moving Reem into a web of small petty issues which he was like sweating the small stuff, but at the same time it was impacting him because he was not in his best of behaviors, and he also had this habit of getting into this web of fault finding, not taking ownership of where he was wrong, because obviously he first of all completely lacked awareness of how he was coming across, because nobody ever taught him all of that. Living in an unaware world, with his blind spots, not really knowing, but constantly getting frustrated, annoyed, disturbed, he went on doing one error to another, and this started to affect his career growth. So, this was his main confusion story. Now, this is how Reem looked like. He had a lot of questions because first thing, he didn't even knew where he was headed, what was wrong where. And in my 3 of the deep dive sessions I did, I found that he was confused, he was stuck, he felt he was trapped, but where? He didn't know where. That's the most important point in a case like this. It's also a bit challenging for any coach, but it's also interesting because sometimes, sometimes not just Reem, most of us may not really be aware of how we are coming across to others. Nobody is fully self-aware, but at the same time, we may not really be able to put a finger on what is it that I'm doing wrong. That's exactly was Reem's situation. If you resonate with this, if it somehow feels you've been ever into this position, you can use the solution that I'm about to share now in a minute from now, and perhaps this will help you. So basically, I just mentioned it here, his personal self. I mean, his main personal issue was with his self. Lack of self-awareness, lot of blind spots, not really able to articulate, and living in a completely chaotic, confused state. The Journey of Self is my coaching program, and in this, I kind of assisted Reem find a way out. So, as we get started, what I would like to mention here, friends, is in this session that I'm sharing with you, I won't be sharing the entire set of work I did with Reem because that's beyond the scope of this video. But what I'm sharing is just one part of it, and how I taught Reem through the activity of finding one's values through which he was able to articulate. And what I would like to also let you all know, whoever is watching this, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel you're not really able to articulate what's wrong, or you don't know what is the priority of your life, you can use this exercise. And this is called where you arrive at your priorities or at a decision or at least a diagnosis of the issue through values. And since Reem was not aware, I said, Reem, let's run a value exercise with you. And he was surprised. He asked me, what's that? So the first thing I did, we did this in a 3-step method. And the first thing was to first help him understand what values are. Because most of us may perhaps are not aware, we hear this term value, and we assign a value to a particular thing, a commodity, but values are our beliefs. So what you're reading on the screen, things which are very, very important to us in life, and they could be our deepest desires or the way, I mean, what really is important to us, that are our values. And the most interesting part of values is they keep changing, friends. It's not like the values are casted in stone and what you have when you were a teenager or a youth, you will have it right now. Our values keep shifting with the phases of our life. As I mentioned before, Reem was into a relationship status where he had to invest a little bit more on the relationship while he was all along thinking whether it is his career or relationship, everything is for granted. And because he never understood the real values of it. So I said, let's understand first the concept, which I explained to him. And then, having understood what's really important to him, and that is what you call values, I walked him through an activity where I gave him a list of close to around 200 values. So it can be anything: freedom, health, spiritual, family, integrity, honesty. So I have a whole host of those list. And in that, after understanding what values really are, the concept of it, I gave Reem a method where I asked him to pick from the list. And besides that, It was like a huge list of 200 set of values, and you can even create your own. But when from the list what I shared, these are the top three Reem had chosen: career, spiritual, and health. So this was after a long deep dive again session where in which I made him understand the value part, and then I gave him we did it together, an exercise where I helped him differentiate from the 200 set of values, pick up the first 40, then drill it down to 20, then to 10, then to 5, and then pick the 3. Because honestly, we may just pick all of it, but if you put it into a framework, that helped Reem pick the top 3, which are these. And then I asked him, the step 2 is an extension, and what I'm sharing here out of these 3 is the career and the spirituality part, where I said, Reem, I'll share with you certain statements. And this were related to career and work and spirituality, because Reem had come up with these 3 as his top values. I said, these are the statements. What you see on the screen here is what I gave him. And I said, you need to fill in the blanks. Now, this will help you find a trend or a pattern to understand your values at a more deeper level. What's really coming out? What's the pattern? What's the theme? This one is a very basic way of understanding values at a deeper level. There are several other ways also. One of it I've already shared in one of my previous videos on a case study with a similar exercise, but this one is more of understanding values, picking the top 3, and then from the top 3, I gave him statements for him to fill those up so that we read into the pattern. And this is how it looks like. So what you see on your screen here is what these are responses of Reem. So in career and work, the main thing I want from a career is, so I've highlighted them in a little brighter font color of blue. Stability is what he looked in. And friends, again, these statements may have different answers for each one of us, because our values are not the same, and the way we perceive a career and work may not be the same. The idea here is that I wanted Reem to give an answer, plus from there find out the theme of what's really important to him. Because if you understand, his main issue was he was not really able to articulate what really was at play, or what was his personal problem that was impacting his career. So on career and work, for each of the statements, he gave his answers. Similarly, I gave him for health as well, but I'm not putting it here. I gave him for spirituality because he had a lot of emphasis on that, and he gave these answers. To him, spirituality was a connect with God. The most spiritual person he knew was a spiritual teacher, and other things, as you see. Once we did that, the final step was to reflect and answer. Because if you see here, the common themes, as I mentioned earlier, from his answers, we are now supposed to pull out the theme and pattern we see in his responses, and what meaning he makes out of it, and how he can relate it to the dilemma or the issue he was having, as we saw it in the first slides. Now here, friends, the one that you see highlighted in color red, once we did the final part, the reflection, and together, me and Reem, we found out that the the theme that were emerging was stability, problem solving ability, and connect with God. So this was not just I asked him to highlight a statement. It was based on a lot of questions that I posed for him. It was a long discussion. We went on for 2 weeks with our not 3 weeks per week, a call of 1 hour each. And through that, we were able to read through the theme, which was this is what he said is very, very important to him. These are his values. So the values now change to career stability is what he really was his priority. Now Reem understood after a dense, intense work that career stability was something of priority to him. This was really important of all that we discuss. Then problem solving ability, and I'll explain you this, what he said in here. In spirituality, his connect with God was very important to him. And this problem solving ability, this came up when Reem also shared with me his various arguments with his boss and his being annoyed and angry on account of certain skills and approach, working styles he held in contrast to his supervisor, and sometimes he was not given a full opportunity to be participate in the problem solving ability, which was again very, very important to him. And he felt in his role that this was something he didn't really had an opportunity, and perhaps he got annoyed and irritated. Having found this, Reem was actually able to connect back to the many, many things that he earlier could not really put a finger on. When I asked him how you got into the web of fault finding, and you had a conflict with your partner, you found fault with her, you found fault with your boss, you were angry and annoyed. And when he looked at his values, really, really what's important to him, he understood that these three things, every time they were not in sync, if his boss did not give him authority to problem solve, cut him off, when he found that his career was lacking instability and lacking stability, and he was passed on for a promotion and was not given one, or when he felt his partners connect with God and his values on spiritualities were not really in sync, is when he realized that these were the main themes emerging, which actually were the main cause of Reem having those constant fights and arguments, getting into that web of constant stress, fault finding, fighting with each other, and he was completely confused as to what he should do next. And that's where, having found these three, he now understood what was the main reason of it. So, going back to the first slide, his personal issue with conflict with partner, annoyed, angry, confused. With these findings, how he could relate it to his dilemma, he understood these three were the most important to him. Uh, Career stability, connect with God, and his health part. And every time at present, when these were his priorities and his values, which was very, very important to him, whenever they were out of sync, he was in a conflict mode. And in order for him to solve his problem, he need to align his life with his values. So friends, in a summary, this was a piece of a major coaching assignment I did with my client Reem, whose major issue was not really able to articulate what the main issue is. So this help of values deep dive sessions helped Reem, and may help anyone for that matter, understand what really is important to us. Unless we know what is our priorities, what is our purpose, and what really matters to us, we may stay stuck in our life all the time, finding solutions to somewhere else, and may not be able to find one, which eventually over a period of time starts to cascade down, impacting our career, our working capacity, our health, our relationships. And a simple method like this can bring a lot of clarity into not just diagnosing where the problem is, but also finding a solution for it. Well, that's all for today. If you would just like Reem, want to experience what's really important for you in your life. You want to learn and explore what are your values so that you live your life with meaning and purpose. I look forward to meet you in my coaching session. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.